Hey, everybody, welcome back. Just to recap really quick, we're here to talk about mental health issues in our communities that are affecting us on a general basis. And hopefully, you guys could identify some struggles that we're talking about and solutions that might help you out. I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today's episode, the Honorable Judge Brian Walsh, who's with us today. Um, and this is a unique presentation that we're going to make because the fact that Brian serves in the role as a district court judge in Stoughton District Court. And normally we have guests here who are talking about their struggles and what they've gone through and what they've faced. And hopefully you guys can connect to those stories and, take away something from that. Um, I think it's really important that we look at the fact that there are systems in place in our communities that are keeping our communities safe and on track, but also offering services. Sometimes when you don't want to receive services, but you need them anyway, Judge Brian Walsh is in the role of being that communicator of establishing law, but also making sure that we receive services to help us stay alive and move forward, if that makes any sense. So, without further ado, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Listen to all the episodes, and you guys do great work. It really is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you.
I wanted to lead the conversation with the focus being on, as your role as a district court judge, when you're seeing this person in front of you after all the evidence has been presented and there are clear mental health issues that are the root issues of why this person got in front of you. So whether it be a crime or whether it be any type of transgression that's led them to be in front of you, I really want to focus on, what do you rely on to make that disposition, to make that finding that's going to affect their lives?
Sure. I would say it depends on what the proceeding is at the time. Sometimes it's right from arraignment. We get a person who you can see with your own eyes what's going on. Someone's in the dock, they're behaving strangely or oddly, or you have an attorney that says, Judge, I think we need an evaluation for this client on competency or criminal responsibility. It can happen that early. Sometimes you get someone who gets summoned in for a case. They didn't get arrested, but they were summoned in for a criminal case. They have to check in with the probation department first. And sometimes we hear from probation, hey, Judge, this person's acting very differently. They definitely have some issues. We'd like to maybe have them evaluated by a court clinician. So we can intervene early on. And by the time it gets to me, let's say if it's after for a disposition, I'm a big believer in the mantra, not all criminals belong in jail. Really good people do bad things from time to time, and they need help. So when you finish, depending on what the case was, what the person's history is like, if there's a clear need for services, I'd much rather craft a disposition that's going to get somebody the mental health evaluation and treatment and aftercare that they need, rather than incarcerating somebody. Again, every case is different, but some people, it just screams at you, this person doesn't belong behind bars. And if they are there, they're going to continue to decompensate. Maybe they're medication deprived, or they're not compliant. They might not get those services incarcerated.
Right.
So we try to craft through our court clinicians and our court clinics outpatient services that get them the mental health care they need, medications they need, and then they can comply with probation. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it ends to a good result.
Right. Have you ever encountered cases where you've had the same person come before you again and again and again, and as you're availing these resources, they're not sticking? They're not making the impact that you desired for this person or for the community. Like, what's in your tool bag is what I'm curious about, because I'm sure it's a team approach. You've identified the court clinicians, the probation department, but working as a system where people have different roles in place and you have this person reoffending, where do you go?
Again, I think for us, the big piece is to try to drill down to find out what's causing them to reoffend. Is it a drug and alcohol problem? Is it a mental health problem? In often cases, it's both.
Right.
It could be a dual diagnosis. You could have somebody who has, for example, undiagnosed bipolar, and they've got a raging drug or alcohol addiction, and they're not taking medications for one they should be, and they're self-medicating for things they shouldn't be. And they're committing, you look at the record, larceny, shoplifting, uttering false checks. What does that tell you? It screams off the page this person is feeding an addiction or is in a mental health crisis or a combination of the two. Sometimes you get people who they just don't do well on probation for whatever reason. And sometimes probation will say to me, Judge, we can sit and babysit this person for another year. They're going to violate.
Right.
And sometimes those don't end well. Those people may have to go off and do a sentence. And sometimes people will say, just give me the time. I can't do this. The flip side of that is you get people who are really good candidates for our mental health diversion courts, our recovery courts, formerly known as the drug courts. They do great work. They're extraordinarily rigorous programs, but they do provide an alternative to being incarcerated. And again, for people who they're struggling through addiction, they don't belong behind bars because it's not going to do them any good. They're going to continue to decompensate. They're not going to get the treatment and the services that they need. So yes, when I see those, we call them frequent flyers, you see them come through.
Yeah.
I say to people all the time, I shouldn't know your name as well as I do. You shouldn't know me this well.
Right.
But I'm glad you're here because now we're going to try to get you the help that you need. So we face that a lot. And there are a lot of good resources that we can use. Like I said, some of our diversion courts, pre-trial and post-trial, are really, really helpful.
So what, if any, resources outside of the court do you implement? Is that a thing, or do you keep it all within the diversion and within the court system itself?
We have a number of court clinics that people can go to. The one struggle I have is Section 35 commitments and Section 12 commitments. And I know you guys are probably familiar with all this, but the Section 12 commitment is somebody comes in and wants to involuntarily commit a family member for mental illness. There's no bed waiting for that person at the end of that 3-day hold. And that's tragic because a person's in crisis. You can do the right thing as best you can to get them an emergent, care. But after 3 days, there's no place to put them.
Oftentimes during that 3-day period, they go from unwilling to deal with their problems to miraculously willing all of a sudden too. And if that bed or that aftercare spot isn't there for them, what a tragedy that missed opportunity is for them. Yeah.
And then in the Section 35, at least the commitment period is longer. It's up to 90 days. I've had people come in and voluntarily want to get into that. I've had other people where they come in and they're there on behalf of a loved one. At least I know we get them in there for that 90-day window. It gives the family some time to either arrange private aftercare. If they're on Mass Health, maybe they can get into an aftercare program. So there's more light at the end of the tunnel for folks that go that route. But those are tough decisions to make. I had people come in front of me and say, Judge, I just want to do it on my own. And I've got mom and dad out in the audience. They're crying. The person is finally, having that come to Jesus moment. And I've had to look at people and say, I can't do it. I can't let you do it on your own because I have a feeling if I give you a court date in 30 days, you're not going to be here.
Yeah.
And that's a real difficult decision that judges have to wrestle with. And sometimes I just have to say, without actually saying it, you got to put your faith in me. I have to do this for your own good to help you. And those are tough conversations to have. But yeah, so we do have, those are resources. It all comes down to money, right? At the end of the day, I wish we had more money in the system that we could provide more mental health beds, more in-court clinicians, but they're there. And the biggest thing is for people, they need to know we have to do a better job advertising them and they have to ask for help. And I find that's the most compelling thing. When people come in that ask, we respond. And we're more than willing to go. And I, as a judge, am more than willing to kind of step out of my traditional role to get them help with services, working with probation and our clinicians.
I'm sure, Christian, I'm sure you can remember a time in your career where you didn't have, nearly as many resources, if, any of those resources, a lot of those, different programs and different things just simply didn't exist yet. The grants weren't there for it. Was it all on your shoulders back then to quite literally judge, the situation? And, what was that like?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of input from the probation department, from what I in the clerk's office see. I mean, a lot of these people come in the door and they encounter the clerks right off the bat. They're the first point of contact. Sometimes red flags go up right there, and they go to probation and then to the judge. It's a real helpless feeling when you have somebody who's screaming for help and there's not a lot you can do. There've been really close calls I've had to make, even on Section 35 commitments when, to me, and I don't have that medical background, but to me, I'm like, this is a person who's screaming, they need to go someplace. And then you have a doctor who did the evaluation who says, I don't recommend a Section 35 at this time. I can override that and say, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do the right thing here. And oftentimes it could be the other way where they're recommending they go and you're like, I just don't see it.
Right.
So yeah, you get left in that position a lot when what you would like to do just isn't there. Maybe it's a monetary issue. Maybe, like you said, those programs haven't even been created yet. I've been in that position. It's uncomfortable, to say the least.
I'm glad you made that point that the court system needs to be better at advertising the services that are available to the community. I think anybody watching this and that's been court involved, has the vision of the courthouse being the man telling me what to do, taking over my life, not listening.
Getting trapped in the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The point that I wanted to make, and I really appreciate you coming on the show and speaking so free willingly. I don't know that the court system's ever going to put a sign outside saying, hey, come get your mental health help here,
Yeah.
substance abuse help here. But this definitely helps in at least our community, people to understand that, hey, that big scary judge with the gavel, he's not trying to hurt you. He is trying to help you through a different channel. Yeah, you carjack somebody, you do something stupid, there's a different conversation. But when somebody gets in front of you in that regard, like you said, you got to switch hats. That's an interesting concept, and I appreciate you saying that publicly.
Yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, "What's the best part of your job?" And it sounds corny, helping people.
Mm.
The district court is the initial point of contact for probably 95% of people who get involved in the criminal justice system. Whether it's a minor possessing alcohol, somebody gets picked up with a straight possession case. That's how you get introduced to the system. It's incumbent, I think, on all judges and all people that work in the courthouses to help these people. If it's a first offense, maybe you catch it in the bud. Maybe you redirect an adolescent from, hey, you don't want to go down this road. We're going to put you into this program to help you. So what I meant to say earlier was we do a really good job, I think, of making people aware that these services exist. But to your point, some people see that front door of a courthouse and say, I'm not going in there to ask for help. And if there's no stigma attached to that anymore, in fact, the resources are there. And we always welcome people to, we're here to serve you, to serve the community. I represent and serve 4 communities. And I really, that's the best part of my job, is to be able to help people. And I touch more people on a daily basis than I think I could do if I was a Superior Court judge or, probate and family court judge, who do great work. I just think we see people and we have the opportunity to impact lives early on before they become the frequent flyers we talked about later, a little bit earlier. That's where I think we can make our most impactful journey.
In my career, we call them program all-stars, frequent flyers. So what's resonating with me is the amount of times in the last 10 years I've been on the other side of the table or on the other side of a phone line, with somebody maybe facing their 2nd, 3rd, 4th probation surrender hearing, just chronic relapsing, and they're not maliciously trying to pull the rug out from under their own feet. And I've told them every single time a couple of things. The judge isn't the final judge in the courtroom. There's a spirit. There's a bunch of different cogs to the machine that create the harmony that happens in court. Do the right thing and the right thing will happen. Just trying to instill people with that kind of confidence and faith. And I can't think of a single time where they did the things that they were supposed to do to rehabilitate themselves that the court said, oh no, we're gonna throw you away anyways. We're gonna give you the time, or you violated a 4th time, sorry. If that element was there, that they were willing to rehabilitate themselves, 100 out of 100 times the court was like, great, keep doing it,
Yeah, you showed me.
Keep going. Yeah.
To their surprise, the court's on their side is essentially what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're human beings too.
Right.
And, when I have a person in front of me on a final violation hearing, the first thing I do is ask probation, I know you have a violation in front of you, but how's the person doing overall? And if I get a good report, the person is, to your point, wanting to go in the right direction. Of course, they're going to have bumps in the road. That's what relapse is. It happens. Are you willing to cut them a break? Are you willing to see the good in the person who is willing to put in the work? And it could be the 4th time they've been up for a violation, but I may have a probation officer who says, I just have something about this person. I like them. I want to help them. I want to continue to help them. And more importantly, I think now this person finally wants to help his or herself. Like I said, we're human. So if we hear that, my inclination would be, I'm not going to give you the committed time. We're going to come up with a structured plan and give you that one more chance. Um, and then of course you get to the point where they may finally have hit rock bottom, and there's no amount of times that are going to kind of get me or any other judge to say, I can't keep doing this. So that's what we don't want to do. That's kind of the last resort. But being a person with feelings and watching another person struggle, having the ability to help them, that's what it's all about for us.
That's amazing. In recent times, this is something I've been curious about since we started our discussion here. In which way have you been seeing things trending? Things getting worse, but you have more availability to resources? Are things kind of getting better? And like, how's that kind of look from the beginning of your journey being a judge to now?
Yeah, I started at the end of 21, so we were in the pandemic at the time. I think I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The pandemic messed everything up.
Sure.
They're going to be writing in the medical journals for the impact that the pandemic had on adolescent learning for years. And we see kids that, had crying out for a need for services because they were secluded during the pandemic. They were doing online learning. Sometimes depends what communities you were in. In some of the big inner cities, they didn't have enough laptops to give to kids to go home and be able to do the online component.
Right.
They were relying on mom and dad, and if they were single parents who were out working, they were relying on the TV or something else.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're still digging out from that, and the court system is not immune from that. We're seeing that as well. So that messed up a lot of things across our system as well. In terms of trending, I'm fortunate in the jurisdiction that I work in. We've got a wonderful population of folks that use our court. They come from all backgrounds. I think we see an uptick in domestic violence cases. I've noticed over the last few years, and drugs. Again, I have to tie the drug issue to the pandemic as well.
Sure.
Obviously, you'd see an awful lot of increase in those type of cases in the last 3 or 4 years.
Have you seen a shift in the type of substances, or has it been pretty consistent?
No, it's horrifying, as you know. I mean, the amount of fentanyl that we see now is really scary.
Yeah.
I feel helpless in a way because you try to tell folks and try to educate them as best you can. It could be that one time you tried and you could go out in a gurney, and it's just awful. So yeah, we're seeing an uptick in heroin down, fentanyl up. Yeah,
And a lot of kind of street manufactured pills and different things, and the presence of fentanyl as a cutting agent in those, even ones that don't make sense, like different stimulants and different things like that. They're finding fentanyl in, and yeah, it's scary. You could be thinking you're getting speed and, go down from one line or something. Yeah.
On the service delivery end, reflecting my years when I was a probation officer in the juvenile court, it was frustrating dealing with the kid in front of me who's 14, 15 years old that needs to be raised, that needs to be taken care of, right? That's just a kid. And I'm looking at the dynamics, of the family they're coming from. And I have, as a probation officer, the expectations from the judge that placed them on probation, saying these are your conditions of probation. You've got a curfew, you've got drug screens, 10 school daily, follow school rules, attend counseling. And then I look at the family that's supposedly raising this child, and I've got no hook on mom and dad as far as you need to go to parenting classes. You need to have a curfew for your kid.
Right.
Why are you relying on me? And I've had these conversations with several families over the years at the kitchen table of like, you're looking at me like customer service. Like, well, Mahesh comes to the door, you better watch it. I'm like, dude, you just gave your power away. You're the father, you're the mother. How come you're not checking the homework? How come you're not looking through the book bag? How come you're not looking through the phone? They're like, oh, I can't do that. You can't do that, or you won't do that. And that was such a frustrating element. That was a constant recurring nightmare with the population I was dealing with, which led to why they ended up, in the position they're in, ending up with me as a probation officer. So like tying the mental health aspects to it. Yes, there's clear issues of like that person is showing all the indications of depression, and anxiety, which led to bad decisions. Yep, that's crystal clear.
Hmm.
But the stuff that we don't identify off the bat, the stuff that's disguised, is what are their lack of supports in the environment that's raising them, and I think what's lacking in our community is more of a collaboration with the courts
Mm.
and with service providers in the community to fill that gap of like, okay, that person has a probation officer. The family has what? Because like after the person's on probation, adult or juvenile, if they're in the community, they're going back to the environment that raised them, what they live in. So if changes haven't been made in that environment, the possibility of them getting back involved with the court systems is rather high.
Yeah, the family education component is huge. Um, I always say in my line of work, months upon months upon months of work could be undone in a number of days or even hours sometimes back in the home environment if the parents or siblings or spouses or whoever it is, the loved ones, don't receive an education. There's also when it comes to substance use, there's the reality of the substance user getting to numb out their pain,
Mm,
but the family never gets that opportunity. They just live in the nightmare and in the pain. And then that substance user goes into treatment voluntarily or involuntarily, and they start to get relief from their substance use problem and their mental health problem, but their family is still living in the nightmare. They're stuck in the past. They're waiting for the shoe to drop. So that is a huge component and oftentimes the family's like, "What do you mean I need to be educated? I know everything about my loved one," and we've talked about that on past episodes.
yeah. Yeah. No one knows my kid better than me.
Yeah.
So I got to jump in here. Again, this is unscripted, and I've mentioned in the past that me and Mahesh's relationship, Ryan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. We might have gone over it a little bit, but Mahesh actually served as a probation officer for one of my family members, and to his point, the cleanest my house was, the calmest my house was when Mahesh Balan was knocking on the door. 100%. And I was just a little guy. I was 3 or 4 at the time. And I seen that chaos, that discord. I recognized that scary guy is coming to my door. And you were just viewed as such a bad entity, not there to help. And we just had to conform quickly, right?
Yeah.
And the second you left, Jesus Christ, we went right back to the chaos.
Oh, I knew it. Yeah.
Of course you did, right? I mean, we've discussed this at length. It's no secret.
Yeah.
But to kind of put a bow on this, right? If you have a parent that's struggling, I feel as though, not saying it's not existent, but there needs to be more of a lens on what's going on with the kids. I know DCF, I'm sure, gets involved, and
Sure.
but I feel like there needs to be more resources within the community, more holistic approaches to say, parents struggling, let's disregard why for a second. Let's just look at the whole total body. Let's look at the whole household. Vice versa with the kids, right? I mean, these kids are struggling in school. They're messing up. And I do understand, you probably look at that as well. What's going on at home? That's your first question. Why are they bullying kids? What's happening to them? But again, that holistic approach of let's get in here. Let's look at the whole family unit. Maybe they need to learn how to be parents. A lot of people have kids young,
Yep.
or they're not ready. I think we can all agree as parents, no one's really ready. There's no textbook. I have a 3 and 4-year-old, and I'm learning something new every day, right?
I lived in a sober house when I found out I was going to be a dad.
Right. So, right. I mean, you have to learn how to fly while flying, and that's a scary concept. And some people can't grasp that, and they're selfish and they stick to their own needs. So, you speaking on that and everything you just threw in, Jeff, that really hit home for me, especially the fact that you were quite literally involved in my life as that young guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen me go into the teenage years and a little bit into my early adulthood. It was very easy to become a product of my environment. It takes a certain mindset, I guess, and people like yourself around to convince somebody that there is an outside version of the life that you live. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for a second. And, I hope that more resources come to the light holistically for families. Or if there are ones out there already, they can create a bigger presence in our community. and yes, tie in with the court system, the school system, DCF, even doctors, right? I mean, it needs to be a better collective. I feel like there's a lot of kind of islands, if you will, of help and support for adolescents, for adults, for humans, but there's not enough bridges between. And that's something near and dear to my heart with this podcast. I don't think we're going to fix that, but bring some more awareness to it, at least start a conversation on that piece.
Yeah, that needs to be more normalized in our communities, offering more, I think, like more workshops at our libraries, in our town libraries, our town halls, having more community meetings, and not making this like this taboo conversation of like, you gotta talk to me about my parenting skills. I'm like,
I think it's getting better though, right? Like, I mean, I've, at least in my world, I don't know if it's just because I've kind of dove headfirst into it, but I'm noticing in general conversations, whether it be a restaurant, a park, a bar room, right? Like, people are more willing to talk quietly. If they notice you have an ear for it, they're in,
Did you feel when you were going through your issues, right, around substance abuse and isolating to substance abuse, right? Did you feel that you had the guidance and the wherewithal to say, I need to go from here to here? Whether it be, I need to sober up and start identifying goals to work towards in that capacity. At 17, I would think the answer is no, left on your own devices. So when you were 17 and you're going through your issues of recovery, right? What could you identify as one or two factors that helped you get from point A to point B?
Ironically, getting arrested, getting, the spotlight of the district court system and probation office shined on me, gratefully, kind of petty trouble led to a continuance without a finding and, eventual dismissal. But during that period, there was some very real, teeth and some very real consequences to it. If I didn't shape up, if I didn't make some better decisions, I was going to be left with some consequences I'm not willing to tolerate or take. So I never look at an arrest, as a negative event. It's, oftentimes a rescue or an opportunity for that person to uncover, what their thing is that is bringing them to that point, of potential loss of freedom or that's, it should be a very eye-opening moment. And when it is, there should be things there. And the amount of things that are there now compared, what I was going to say earlier was the language is very important. The language we use, and I hate to admit it, but when we shifted about a decade ago away from drug addict and drunk and alcoholic and just kind of the common language to substance use disorder, and this person is experiencing disordered use of substances and there's something wrong there. What, that is a symptom of an underlying problem. Let's address the underlying problem. There's been a huge shift in the substance use world to thinking and focusing that way. And I hope we are. It certainly feels like we are shifting right now. But ultimately, society needs to shift into doing that with mental health, with general mental health, with chronic, severe mental health issues. They're all symptoms of an underlying cause or condition. A lot of people think trauma. A lot of people think dislocation and generational, deterioration from, loss of industry and kind of American factories and all those things, the communities that existed around these big important factories and industries. And then 5-6 generations later, once that, is moved out of the community, what's left there is a lot of, generational trauma and things that need to be fixed. It's not the drug wasn't the problem. It was the symptom of the problem. Yeah, often.
But I think the commonality that we're hitting upon is that when you have that person in front of you and you can identify the factors that contributed to this person being in front of you, right? Whether as a therapist, I've got a client in front of me, or whether I'm a probation officer with this, you know, new kid in front of me that was assigned to me by the judge, right? Okay, so I've got this person, and we look at what contributed to them being in front of you, right? And I touched upon this in other episodes. And what? Now what? Meaning, what are you going to do? Yeah, your parents suck. Okay, I get it. School sucks. You think you suck. So it's all about labels. So teaching that person that you're still you, but you could take this problem that you're dealing with. If you could pull this outside of you and look at it like a math problem and be unemotional about it and say, how am I going to get from this to where I want to be 5 years from now? And what is that going to look like? And that's a scary question, especially when you ask someone who's 16 years old. They don't know.
Hmm.
They don't know what their options are. They don't know they have options.
I couldn't see 6 months down the road, let alone 6 years down the road when I was 16 years old.
Right? Yeah. Because a lot of the kids I've worked with over the years didn't know that they were allowed to even think that way.
Sure.
And I mean, I was a probation officer covering Weymouth, Braintree, from Cohasset, to Hull, and they're right next door to each other. The disparity of the socioeconomic wealth, but I had to keep that mindset of this kid is crying about the fact that they don't have any friends, and I'll drive a half a mile into Hull, and this kid's crying about the fact that they're getting evicted.
Hmm.
Both are very real issues in their little worlds, because it's their world, and I had to dig in deep and not laugh at the kid. It's like, you don't, what's the matter? You don't have a softball team?
Right.
I'm sorry about the echo that's going on right now in your big mansion of a house, but you got to get your shit together, and stop dealing coke. Let's start there. But the mentality of I've been victimized, therefore here I am. Yeah, true. But what are you going to do about it? Change things, touching upon prior episodes. And that's a hard conversation, man, especially when that person's like, well, I don't have any choices. And they truly believe that.
And that's bullshit, because there's always a choice. There's always a decision to make. You might not like it, but there is.
So I would commonly say as a probation officer, it's like, you make the choice or I will. And I'll get you in front of the judge, and it's going to be DYS, or it's going to be forestry camp. I'll never forget this kid I worked with in Weymouth. Love this kid. Obviously, I'm not going to say her name, but she had a lot of siblings. She was the oldest sibling. She took care of these kids, right? She didn't have time for homework. So when she went to school, it was time to meet up with friends and be social. I get that, but she took it to the next level. Started off with the chins that the school took out on her for truancy and whatnot, led up to, possession of alcohol, minor things compared to other crimes that I'm sure you see in front of you,
Sure.
like manslaughter or whatnot, assault and battery and whatnot. But she kept violating probation because she wanted to go head to head with me. And I'm like, you're not helping yourself, because I'm sorry, but I have to give a review of you to my supervisors, and you're not doing what you need to do, And she's like, oh, come on. Oh, come on. I'm like, nah, what do you mean, come on? It's like, these are basic things that you can do that you're choosing not to do, and there are going to be consequences about it. It's under forestry camp.
And what is that?
Forestry camp was back in the day when we were state funded to take juveniles, go camping, run by DYS.
Is that in Plymouth?
It was all over the state,
Okay.
depending on what court system you worked with. Yeah, a lot of our kids went to the Cape from Quincy District Court, Quincy Juvenile Court. When she came out of it, this kid's self-esteem was through the roof. She had structure, she had consistency, and she had goals.
She was removed from her environment.
Right. So tying back into when she came back home, it felt like a house of cards. It was
Oh, wow.
it was the most devastating thing to see, as someone who tried to get this kid structure, you know, but then I'm looking at the parents like, okay, take it from here, you know. Yeah, I'm thinking about the mom who had the best intentions of the world, but she wanted to be her kid's best friend. And she talked to her like she was her best friend. I'm like, nah, that's not your friend. That's your kid. Be a mother. Like, and how do you have these conversations? I mean, I don't have a problem telling anybody anything, that's fine with me. But like, normally, how do you have that conversation? That's a tough conversation to have with people unless you're consistently doing it. And basically, you're becoming their therapist and teaching them skills to be a parent. But more of that needs to happen. And that needs to be normalized, not pull the punches on that, you know?
I'm happy you brought that up because I wanted to ask you a question, Brian, if it's appropriate. Is there anything during your tenure so far that profoundly sticks out to you where there was a rehabilitation case from whether it be mental health or substance abuse where the court got involved and like you look at that and you're like, you feel that sense of pride of like, we helped them. Now they're doing this.
Yeah. In the recovery court. And to your point, labels mean a lot. We used to call it the drug court. Had kind of a negative connotation. Now it's called a recovery court. That sounds good right from the time you hear it.
Right.
It means there's hope at the end of this. It's a really rigorous program, as I'm sure you're aware. But my experience is going back to when it was drug court. Judge Zimian from South Boston started the court in Southie and brought it over to Dorchester, where I was a DA, and I got the chance to be a part of that drug court for a while. Just an unbelievable experience, and the road was littered with some tragedies that came out of that, but the success stories. I had a chance to go to a number of the graduations and to see where these people came from at the beginning, with all the ups and downs. And to your point, talking about really not so supportive family members, the ones that came back and were just there with all their, siblings and parents and who were so proud of them. And they were dragged through the dredges of their journey right along with them. They've been in and out of jail, in and out of probation. And they finally got into a program that said, this is your last chance to avoid incarceration. It's a really rigorous program. And to see them come out the other end, those were the biggest success stories I personally, not even as a judge, have just been involved in as a lawyer, to get to be a part of that, to watch that journey, and just to hear their stories at graduation. A unique opportunity. And I got to do a little bit as a judge in Brockton. I attended a couple of the graduations there with judges I worked with there who ran the program in Brockton. So, I mean, just on a personal level, just watching that human story finally unfold positively was huge. Just a fantastic opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because oftentimes my clients, you and I could be working in tandem and we don't even know it, trying to help the same person. And I can't think of a time in the last 10 years where I felt like I was working against the court or the court was working against me, and there might not have even been communication or collaboration going on. And I can also think of a time where that wasn't the case. It was very different. So yeah, I think the same shift needs to happen in the direction of mental health to kind of destigmatize, am I going to get reported as a parent if I go into a courthouse and say I'm struggling with anxiety or depression? Like, people really ask themselves that question and oftentimes believe a lie that trouble will befall upon them if they try to get help. What are some things you can kind of speak on, regarding that where, that's erroneous and just not the case?
Yeah, I don't see a ton of that with people coming in worried that they're going to get, brought in. Sometimes you might have an assault and battery on a minor and it's a family member. Um, you know, Obviously people might have a well-founded fear that something could happen to them there. I won't really run across a lot of that in my work, but I mean, I can certainly understand that concern. And like you said, to get rid of the stigma that, if you need it and you ask for it and you come in, hopefully it's going to be there. The services are absolutely there.
That makes sense. And I was going to jump in on that too. I'm happy you said that, Jeff, because I went through that myself before I sought treatment for mental health for legitimate reasons. I was afraid that was going to invite DCF into my house or something, that I was going to make me an unfit parent. But right, asking for help does not warrant judgment that you're an unfit parent. If anything, makes you a better person, better parent, right? So
better resourced
Yeah.
parent at
To
least.
say, hey, maybe I'm not operating with a full deck. I need to do something here, right? So that's I like that you brought that up.
So long as the you know, the aftercare piece or
Right.
the action piece gets taken.
Sure.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, in the adolescent world, when parents would come to the courthouse when I was there, it was called a CHINS
And
back in the day.
what does that stand for?
Child Needs Services. So that switched to CRA, Child Requiring Assistance.
Hmm.
So they label it differently, you know. But again, there is thought around the marketing around that of like, it's okay for you to come in and say that you're struggling with whatever's going on with your kid, and you're asking for help. And there's a big difference between applying for voluntary services with DCF as opposed to mandated
Right.
services. So to avoid mandated services of like, no, DCF's coming to your door and saying, hey, let us in. What's going on? Based on someone filing a 51A for neglect of a child. That's what a 51A is for
Hmm.
those of you watching. But a parent reaching out saying, somebody's got to help me with this. I'm in over my head. I'm afraid my kid's using X, Y, and Z drugs. They're hanging out with the wrong crew. They're not going to school. They're violent at home, whatever the case may be. But being brave enough to walk in through that door, and talking to some guy you don't even know, who's going to do an intake and assess the situation. That takes guts, and I commend the parents that are able to do that, and I encourage the parents that are out there listening to this saying, I got to do something about my kid. Yeah, it's great you talking to your friend and getting advice, from your barber or whatever, but like that's only going to go so far.
Right.
But you gotta reach out and identify the professionals that have a proven track record of addressing these issues and humble yourself enough
Mm.
to receive services. I think ego is a big part of it. I keep going back to ego in all these episodes, that our fear of anything is based on, a lot of it is based on our ego, to admit and accept the fact that I need help. But I question, is that a knock on our ego or is that a strength?
I think it's people asking for that or stating that to some degree, viewing that as a failure.
Yes. But I would challenge that and say, no, that's a strength. For you to put yourself aside and saying my kid's needs are bigger than my ego, or bigger than me feeling in the moment I'm inadequate as a parent.
Mm.
Whatever you're struggling with, that, in that moment, to set that aside and say, I got to go to a professional to help me find out what I can do for my kid, as a parent, I think is a huge strength.
So I'd be interested, in the understanding of how much time we have here. Maybe you two could just riff on this, because I'm sure there's at least one person watching. And I'd like to connect us to the viewers, right? So if there's somebody watching who has a family member, a child, whoever, what would you recommend as a judge or as an ex-probation officer, off duty right now, if you will, for them to seek help?
Yeah, what action would they
Yeah.
take?
Well, give me a circumstance. Like, I mean,
So what I was saying is, if somebody, a wife wants to section her husband, or their kids are acting up, like there's somebody in need of services,
Mhm.
or even somebody for themselves. Try to put yourself in the viewer's perspective right now.
Sure.
And you're like, oh my God, there's a judge on there and he's talking about all this stuff and it doesn't seem as scary now. So what do I do? Do I walk in the courthouse and just say, hey, help? You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah,
what
where
are
would
the
they go?
proper steps here that maybe somebody from watching this will walk in and do now?
You mentioned being sectioned. So
Hmm.
let's just take a very generic example. A person doesn't know what to do. They feel that their family member or loved one is a danger to him or herself on the street if they're left untreated. That's kind of the criteria. And they might not know what to do. And they might feel, geez, I don't want to get this person now involved in the quote unquote the system.
Right.
Maybe they don't have the resources to do a private treatment or have somebody get in, through a physician that way. We see, 95% of the sections that we have are exactly that fact pattern. Her mother comes in and she's just distraught, gives me a 3-page affidavit of the last 2 years. And this kid's been in and out of the hospital and has OD'd multiple times. And mom and dad are just wringing their hands. They don't know what to do. And then we have to get involved. So based on the evaluation of our court clinician, if the person might come in and be willing to go, thank God you finally found me. I'm tired of being sick and tired. And they want to go. Other times they come in, as I mentioned, They may be combative and they're convinced, I can do it on my own, Judge. You just got to let me go. I got an appointment set up next Monday. No, you don't. And now we're going to have to help you. And so, to family members that are dealing with that, I'd say, the district courts are here. The court system's here to help you. Come in, speak to the folks in the clerk's office, go through the process and see if we can do that. See if we can help you with that intervention that gets the person out of crisis into treatment. And then hopefully, with an aftercare plan, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, et cetera, keep them out of the criminal system if we can. A lot of the sections I see, the person has no criminal history at all. They're just in the throes of addiction and the family doesn't know what to do. So to your point, what do? Have them come in. Have them come into the court.
It almost seems that that's proactive instead of reactive, right? It seems as though statistically, if they don't seek that help, they're going to find themselves in front of you and it's going to be less forgiving at that point.
Yeah,
right?
eventually they might go off the grid for a while. The parents don't know where they are. They're out committing crimes to feed a habit. Understandable. I get where it's coming from. Still, we got to drill down and get to the underlying root of the problem and how to fix it. So that may be what causes the family to finally say, somebody mentioned something about court. Let me just go down there and find out if they can help me. And sometimes that's what they do.
Yeah.
They come in and just let it all fly to the clerk and say, what do I do? I don't know what to do to save my son or daughter, to save my husband or wife.
I appreciate that reality, right? Not perspective. That's the reality of it. Because even as a parent, like I said, my girls are young, but should they ever face something like this, even having the knowledge I do, until that very moment, Brian, I don't know that I would have walked into a courthouse.
Tough decision, right?
Well, right, because you associate court with negative, with bad. It's jail, it's cuffs.
Yeah.
But to walk in, with a different mindset of they're trained, they're professional, they can help, they can get me resources until we can find an outpatient program or something along those lines. I really appreciate you plugging that together.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know, again, there's a process. You have to come in, you have
Sure.
to go through the process. And a lot of it's based on what the clinician says this person is. But let's just say it's someone that we know has really had the ups and downs and is in the throes and is a danger to him or herself out on the streets if left untreated. That's exactly the type of person that a Section 35 can help get them into like I said, a 90-day evaluation, and then hopefully come out with a good plan to keep them on
Right.
the road to sobriety. I've had, more than one success story coming back and visit me. And I've only been on the bench. I'm in my 5th year. And I've presided over hundreds of Section 35s. And I've had people just drop in randomly,
Yeah.
come back and I have to admittedly say, I don't remember you until I go look it up.
Sure.
And I'm like, now I do. And you didn't look like that 2 years ago. And what's going on? And they're like, it saved my life. My parents finally, had enough of me and they got me the help, and I was able to follow through with the help of a lot of people. As you know, it takes a village.
Yep.
And, they just came back to say, thank you to you and the probation officers and stuff for getting me in the right place. And it's a success story. So love to have those people come
Yeah.
back to visit.
That's the best.
The
feeling.
other ones, not so much, because
Sure.
then we have to have a very different conversation, which is equally painful when they couldn't get through it.
Right.
The amount of people that said, "Are you crazy? I'm not going back to tell him nothing," and
Yep.
being on the other side of it.
I say this to people a lot, and
I can't wait to show them this clip.
we wrap something up, and I'll say to them, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I hope we never see each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a good message to hear from a judge or a probation officer as you're leaving for hopefully the last time. And I always say this with all the respect and love I can garner. I hope we don't have to see each other again.
Yeah.
And if we don't, that means somebody did something right, and they get the credit for it.
I had a judge in Quincy District Court. So juvenile record was very, very spotty. You could see that surely. My adult, I had one mishap, and the judge said that. He said, look, I know what you do for a career now. You've made something out of yourself. I know your family. So he was kind of giving a tip of the hat that, you could have been worse. And he said, you're going to walk out of here today. I never want to see you again.
Yeah, right.
I was like, me neither, Judge. Thank you.
Not insulted by that at all.
Nope,
I get what
nope.
you're saying, and I'm out of here.
But in the street and passing, I would absolutely thank them for that, to give me that opportunity to recognize that, hey, you're doing the right thing, and I'm not going to beat you up now.
It's too funny. Like after we started doing this podcast, like we're a year now, right? Into this.
Yeah.
The number of people that I used to have on probation with me that are in their 30s and 40s now.
I see in the comments.
Like another gray hair just popped out. But
At least you have ones to pop out. I don't have them anymore.
but I just had a young man reach out to me who's out in California now. And when I had him on probation, man, he gave me a run for the money. I chased this kid like all over Weymouth, Um, but he reached out and he said, I want to thank you for the effort you put into me, because, he didn't have that. He's a substance abuse counselor out in California, and the kid's killing it, you know. And I'm writing to him and messaging him like same thing, like I remember the name, because I wrote so many reports on this kid, but I didn't remember him as a person. So but reconnecting, the stories just come back in my head, like when I would chase this kid all over Weymouth, um, and it's funny, now, but the fact that he took the time to reach out to me and say, "Hey, thanks," it means a lot.
Sure does.
It's a great feeling that reinforces, to do what we're doing, you know. But it's a great feeling. But it's, you know, I'll be running, I get something to Walmart with my wife, my kids. I'm thinking about when my kids were younger, and somebody would come up to me, and it was that awkward moment of like, "Hey, is this going to be a hug, or is this going to be like this guy's taking a swing at me?"
Right.
And my wife and I have this understanding that if I introduce her, it's good, but if I ignore her, she needs to walk away with the kids,
I'm gonna go with the milk. Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's happened a couple of times. I had a mother who was a cashier who left her station to come to the one I was at. It was like 2 stations away, the cashier, to scream at me, go up and down, like, "You locked my son up,
Oh
you
no.
SOB, da, 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 da."
Wow.
Big commotion, right? And I'm being quiet. Manager comes over. He's like, "Is there a problem here?" You know, Thinking on the problem. I'm like, "No, there's no problem. Your employee's yelling at me because I was her son's probation officer, and unfortunately, I had to recommend they go to DYS." So this guy pauses, looks at her, looks at me, and goes, "I'm so sorry. Oh my God," like type thing. But yeah, there were those awkward moments as well. Like, I don't know if you ever experienced that.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Walk to the car after work and be like, take a look to the left,
Yeah,
right.
right?
Make sure click the alarm, let it sit for 30 seconds, and then head out.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, no bad experiences, but
Thank God.
that's a reality of it's an occupational hazard, right?
Mm.
That
Yeah.
not all customers that come with us end up satisfied when they leave. And
Right.
That's unfortunate, but it's a reality of kind of what we do. So. Haven't been screamed at in the store yet.
Yeah. Well, listen, Brian, I appreciate you taking the time to join us. And I really appreciate you explaining to our viewers that there is hope and there is help by coming to the district court and utilizing the services that they would choose to engage in and be proactive instead of having to be forced to be in front of you
Correct.
in cuffs, right? So make the healthy choices out there, folks. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button to help us reach other viewers. And if you have comments about what you've seen today, please drop a comment in the comment box. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next episode. Thank you.